You've got to do what's best for you. It's your life. It's not your parents' life. It's not your friend's life. You don't have to do anything anyone expects you to do. Realize there are repercussions to every choice you make, and you have to own it, but still do what's best for you.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we have the incredible privilege of having Roger Nygard with us here today. When I saw this guy's summary and the fact that he's like a major editor on Curb Your Enthusiasm, I immediately knew you would love this guy.
Yeah, he was so great. Such great vibes, funny. Obviously we get more into relationships in a minute, but just I love Curb. Like I've been obsessed. My family's been a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm for so long. Larry David was the creator to Seinfeld. So if you're a Seinfeld fan, it's the same idea. You've got to watch Curb. Do me a favor after this episode and just please watch one episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm just for me.
I told you it's too much for me.
This isn't about you right now. I'm talking to our audience. Again, he always has to make it about him.
Much.
No one asked him how he feels about it. This is my desire and my wish.
He's never happy.
Okay, everyone, please go. Please go watch Curb. Let us know your thoughts. Give me your feedback. Are you Team Sophie or Team Adi? We're going to do a little vote.
Oh my God, we're totally doing this survey. Remember when we did the survey about toilet paper?
Yeah.
I feel like that was one of my favorite Instagram surveys.
Well, now we have to tell everyone.
We have to tell everybody? Okay.
So we had this survey. It's really important. Do you grab the toilet paper into a ball and then...
Like a crazy, insane person who doesn't care where poop gets on your hands.
Like a brilliant person. And then wipe? Or do you, like a psychopath, fold up your toilet paper in even amounts per square inch?
Just square over square like it's meant to be.
So that was the question. So are you team sane, which is you just grab a bunch of toilet paper and wipe yourself, because who has that much time? Only a Virgo. Or do you fold up? Yeah, so that was the survey. It was about 50-50, not going to lie.
52-48, I won.
Okay.
Let's be clear.
Okay.
Let's hope that same thing is about to happen on the election.
So now the next one is...
So the next one we're going to do is Curb.
Are you team Curb or not?
Yeah, I think I like this one. We're gonna do that after. The thing that I loved about Roger so much was he worked for 7 years on this documentary, The Truth About Marriage. And what's amazing and that I really, really love to see was the viewpoint of a single person trying to understand marriage, because he was in and out of 3 relationships. I don't want to give up all the things that he realized.
It also just makes sense that it took him 7 years. Marriage is intense. Marriage, like to uncover the truth about marriage, I would hope it would take 7 years. Marriage is intense.
I'm still trying to figure out we're 11 years in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us try and make sense of things before we're in it. And, he's not married. He was in and out of relationships at the time, but like I remember my college friends trying to make sense of our relationship when they weren't in a relationship. And when you cheated on me, their judgments and their like harsh black and white thinking, shout out Seema. And, and just thinking like, oh, he's such like a bad person to quote on, to do this thing. And it's like, there's so much gray area. And if there's one thing that you're listening to this podcast for, it's we really hit on those gray areas of things from addiction to...
And just to be clear, by the way, because we've done a lot of learning, and I know you say oftentimes like you appreciate so much the growth we've had because of that. I still wish we could have had that growth without me cheating on you. That would have been really amazing.
Sure. I wish a lot of times I didn't have pain and horrible things happen to learn. But regardless of what the story is around that pain, whether your parents got a divorce, whether you're you were cheated on or you cheated or whatever bad incident, you hit rock bottom because of alcohol, drugs, X, Y, and Z. Yes, we all wish that the bad thing didn't have to happen, but it did. And it's not about the thing.
Yeah, and that's what I love about him. The whole conversation we have with him is all the knowledge that he acquired, which, by the way, you'll see a lot of it is the stuff we've already shared with you, like the idea that you have to complement each other. You're not the same person. You're never going to be the same person. Talking a lot about what successful marriages and relationships have in common, and then what sabotages them normally, which I think is really, really huge. And Sophie, you just mentioned this thing about, not having judgment. And that's so hard. Like, we all think we know how we would feel in this situation. I think about this a lot, actually, because I talk to clients who have been in completely different life circumstances than me. And we always want to believe that, but if I was in that situation, had I been abused or molested when I was younger, I would have said something, or
I would have done this way.
And
like, would you? How do you know? You've never been through it.
And I think that's a really, really big lesson. And first of all, he's like the best storyteller, which is probably not a surprise. He's been making documentaries. He literally did The Office and Curb Your Enthusiasm. He's an amazing storyteller. It's so much fun to have talked to him.
Ooh, should we watch it tonight?
Sure.
Okay. Yay. It's a date.
And you guys are going to absolutely love Roger. Can't wait for you all to listen to him. As usual, I want to hear your input. Like, there's so many tips and little takeaways from this thing. I really want to know how this connects for you all. So do that screenshot thing. Tag him, me, Sophie, Ignited, whoever you really feel like is part of that story, and let us know what sunk.
We're so excited for you to listen to this episode.
See you on the other side.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the conversation piece of today's episode. We are so excited to have Roger Nygard here with us. Roger's been a part of so much of what you've seen on TV and in films, The Office, Veep, Curb Your Enthusiasm. But he decided to talk about marriage recently and relationships. And it just so happens that this is a relationships podcast.
Dun, dun, dun.
So really, really excited to talk about your new documentary, The Truth About Marriage. Thank you so much for coming here, Roger.
You're welcome. No, I'm so glad to be here. I mean, you guys I'm excited. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very excited because you guys are famous.
Look who's talking. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for that little kudos. But I gotta ask you, man, making this movie, were you in a relationship while you were making this film?
Well, I made it over a period of 7 years. So yes, I was in and out. But I'm currently single, and I was not married. I've never been married. I feel like I got close 3 times. There were 3 relationships where I was in love with somebody, and I was imagining myself married and maybe with kids and spending our lives together. And then they all ended disastrously in one way or another. So I felt like such a failure. And so I got obsessed. I mean, that's what I do as a documentary filmmaker. I get obsessed with a topic or a mystery or conundrum, and I set out to solve it. I'm like the investigator, and I go out to interrogate all the witnesses and the experts and everybody and try to get to an answer. And so for this particular documentary, the question for me was, why are marriages so difficult, or relationships? Why are relationships so hard for people? it's not easy, right? It's not natural, apparently. What's going on? And so that's what gripped me to sort of solve this over this 7-year period. And one reason it took 7 years is because it's a difficult subject. But I got a stack of books about 6 feet tall and started reading by all the experts. I mean, you go to the library or bookstore or online, and you can see there's a lot of books about relationships.
There are a lot of books trying to help people navigate this.
So I started reading and then formulating my questions, my answers, and what I wanted to ask the experts. So then I've sent out a bunch of emails and contacts to all these people, and whoever responded basically is who I interviewed.
I love it. I love it. You know, first of all, I have to say that when I was younger, and by that I even mean, you know, like 18 to mid to late 20s, I was wondering if marriage was a thing that could sustain, right? Like if it was a natural thing. And I know that's one of the questions you ask in the film. And then after getting into the marriage, I mean, our listeners know this, you know, I wish there was a freaking roadmap. Like I wish somebody would have told me.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. It's so kudos to you for going and pursuing that. It is, you know, being in a long-term committed relationship is not for the faint of heart.
Well, you know, I interviewed the Gottmans, and John Gottman put it this way. He said that a relationship will naturally deteriorate over time unless you put conscious intent into it.
Constant.
So if you start a relationship with somebody, it will end unless you work on it. It isn't going to naturally take care of itself.
Yeah, it will unravel. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you remember, Adi, when we were talking about getting married and I was questioning whether or not it was even necessary? And funny your stance 5 minutes ago, how you're like, I always wondered. And then I said to him, what's the big deal? Like, do we really have to? And he got so butthurt and was so upset.
Well, let's get back to how this actually happens. First of all, it was before you that I questioned it. Because when I met you, I told you this is different, etc. But what happened was I bought a ring. She didn't know this, but I bought a ring. My whole family, I'd asked her dad already if I could marry his daughter.
Wow.
And then like the next week, Sophie comes back from a girls' weekend and goes, you know, this whole marriage institution, I don't know if it's for me. And I'm like, holy shit. I got everybody ready. What do you mean? It was a very serendipitous moment.
She was testing you and you passed the test.
Yep.
Barely,
we were testing each other.
But I totally get the thing about being afraid of this stuff sometimes. So over 7 years in and out, that must have affected the filmmaking itself as you navigated in and out of these different relationships during the time of making this movie.
Yeah, well, in hindsight, I can see, I mean, I was sabotaging relationships. And I understand now better than I did. I don't fully understand everything because you never get there. You know, your whole life is a learning experience and you never arrive at, okay, I know everything, particularly with relationships. But looking back, now I can see why and how I would undermine things so that they would help. I was helping the relationships come to an end because they are difficult and I didn't want to do the work, and work is hard.
Yeah.
Who wants to work, right? But there's a greater reward when you work for something than if it's just handed to you or you find it on the street.
Absolutely.
How did making this, it sounds like working through this making of the film and in and out of your own relationships and getting this insight. I mean, we love the Gottmans. We've done a workshop with them. We talked to them afterwards. And I mean, I love their insights over these years and the research they've done. How has your approach to relationships changed from making this?
Well, you use the word roadmap, and that's an excellent analogy. And that's what the Gottmans provide, I think, is they help people provide a framework for fixing and maintaining relationships, doing reparative work. Usually that's what people need by the time they get to the Gottmans or when they go to a therapist. One of the therapists I interviewed, John Friel, said that when people came to him for help, it's like someone going to the ER and saying, I broke my leg 7 years ago. Can you fix it? Well, if you had come here 7 years ago when you first broke it, I would have been able to do much more. But now it's going to be very difficult to help you walk normally again. And a relationship is the same thing. And so I'm sort of jumping way ahead, but one of the things that all the experts agree on is that if you're thinking of getting married today, right now, this is something that you're thinking of doing, the best thing you can do to increase your chances for a happy relationship and for longevity in a relationship is premarital counseling.
Yes.
And they've found religious couples do better than non-religious couples. And it's not because they're religious, it's because the religions force them to have premarital counseling. And counseling isn't a hard thing. It's actually fun. It's like someone listens to you who's got experience and is engaged and can offer constructive solutions. You can have these interesting conversations, and it's really helpful and fun. It should be fun and helpful. And that's why they're here. Because let's say you get married without any discussions about what's important to you. Well, you're going to have a lot of surprises and frustrations, which leads to arguments.
Some of them not comfortable surprises.
Exactly. I mean, there's simple things like, how dark or light do you want the bedroom? Is it okay to leave the TV on all night when you're sleeping? How many kids are you expecting to have? How many times do you like to have sex per day? What's off are strip clubs off limits? Is masturbation, is porn off limits? How much is too much to spend on a pair of shoes? I mean, there's so many things that if you discuss these in advance in a fun way, you'll just have a much better chance, and your percentage is going to go up way beyond what the typical couple is, like a 50% chance if it's a coin flip.
Plus the fact that if you had these conversations ahead of time, you got used to having these semi-weird, uncomfortable conversations sometimes. They don't come up around conflict that randomly showed up in your relationship, but rather there was an effort to learn about each other, right? I think what you're so right about is talking to a mediator or somebody who's listening to you and has tools can be really enjoyable when you're not in conflict and in trauma. When you just had a terrible discovery or somebody massively screwed up, it's really hard to sink into that. I mean, some of those questions you mentioned over and over has absolutely come up in our relationship. And I don't know, would have saved us at least a handful of months of conflict over the 15 years we've been together.
And I also just feel like when you were talking, Roger, like the first thing that comes to mind is that, work is hard, but grown adults, if you're adult enough to get married, you should be adult enough to know that on the other side of this hard work is something so rewarding. And it's like the same as working out. Like if you're a grown adult and every time you go to work out, you're like, like our 8-year-old and like whine every time. And you're like, but it's hard work. You don't. You get used to it because you realize when I go to my yoga class, when I go into the gym, it's part of the process to work hard, and working hard feels good. And this is even more rewarding because it's with your partner. Yeah,
I'm grateful that Sophie, because we had a massive breakup about almost a year in our relationship, I'm really grateful that she said on the heels of it, I'll give you another chance, but we're going to couples counseling. So it was at the onset of a relatively new return to this relationship that we got a chance to do that. Versus, well, let's get back together and then wait for the next crisis. And that was huge insight on Sophie's behalf to do it. I wish I knew, and I'm saying this to all of you listening right now who are either in new relationships or are thinking about getting in a relationship pretty soon. Get over the concept that you only get help when a relationship is in trouble. That's insane. Like you would never do that in any other area of your life. You don't go to change your oil in your car when the car's broken down. Yeah. That's too late. Yeah. You don't, as Roger mentioned, you don't go, I had this break in my leg years ago. I should go see a doctor. It was happened 15 years ago in football and college. No, you go when it happens. And if you're getting into a relationship, learn how to be in relationship better. We work with a lot of couples now. I would probably, maybe kissing the two of them would not be a good idea for couples coming to me for counseling. But I would be so grateful if a couple came to me saying, we're coming here preemptively to understand how to be in better coupleship. I think that would be a huge...
Well, it's also it's like preventative medicine. It's the same idea. I take vitamins every day and eat healthy and get good sleep and, clean drinking water every single day because I know that will prevent me from getting sick. Like knock on actual wood, but I don't know the last time I was actually sick. And as a family, we really don't get sick that much because we're preventing that ahead of time by being healthy every single day.
That was my goal in making the documentary and writing the book, was to come up with a simple list of ideas or concepts or behaviors that anyone could do pretty easily to change the trajectory of any relationship. primarily my own. I'm doing this for myself. And then you got to, if you follow the documentary, you learn what I learned. It just struck me as bizarre and almost psychotic that as a society, we don't provide a class in high school for how to have a relationship. The most important thing, arguably, you'll ever do in your life is to choose a life partner. There's no guidance. You have to go out and make the same mistakes over and over that everyone else has made by trial and error until, I mean, if I had just known a couple of things like the Gottman's book, if I'd read one book by John Gottman, I would have been so much further ahead and done much better in my relationships. So I just tried to sort of coalesce it into easier to understand terms. Well, just try this experiment. It costs you nothing.
Do you mind, like, out of all the learning you did, what would be for our listeners, right? There's people listening right now who, again, are either new in relationships or single and trying to find somebody. What would be a tip, like your number one learning thing, if you're going to get in a relationship? Yeah,
that's easy. It really could. I mean, there was definitely a number one, and there's a number 1 through 10 in the book and the documentary. But the number one that kept coming up again and again is that it's based on the fact that we have unrealistic expectations, first for ourselves and for our partner. And it's not really our fault. It's provided by our culture, our society. We have expectations for how we should behave and interact from friends, relatives, parents, church, synagogue, whatever. They all expect you to do this and that. And they're virtually unreachable expectations. And there are reasons for that. But the number one thing you can do, and try this experiment and just see what happens. I'm willing to wager it'll increase your happiness, your passion, your sex life, your productivity, your income, everything by doing this. First of all, understand that you and your partner probably get along well, are a good match because you're opposites in many ways. We're meant to complete each other, not duplicate each other. And so you have a different energy from your partner. You know, two masculines, if you want to use that word, or two feminines, or two type A's, or two whatever, don't work as well as their counterparts. So now if you understand that your partner has a different need than you do, let's call it like a relationship vitamin. I've got a vitamin that I need when I'm in my feminine and when I'm in my masculine stage or needs or whatever you want to call it. Sure. And so when you get home at the end of the day or at some point during the day, toward the end, take your cell phone, put it on airplane mode, put it aside, turn off the computer and the TV, make eye contact with your partner and say, honey, how was your day? How are you feeling? Now that seems obvious, right? But now here's the hard part, particularly for the masculine part of you, then shut up. It's listen. So hard to shut up because you want to answer, litigate, interject, suggest. No. How was your day, or how are you feeling about your day? And then offer empathy. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Or, oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's empathy, right? Just showing that you understand what your partner is feeling by expressing understanding of it. No judgment, no suggestions. So it's really this simple. For about 20 minutes, 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 some nights per night, this is the vitamin that the feminine side of me or anyone needs per day when the feminine is processing the emotions of the day, they need to be expressed.
Yes.
Not treated. No, just listen. And then end with a hug. That will get you so much further than anything else you can do. That one thing, if you put in that time, and we don't do it because now the way our culture has evolved and with technology, we come home, we turn on the TV, or we look at our iPhone, and then we're no longer facing each other. We're facing a screen, and we stop relating to each other, and we start becoming very similar. And we want stability, but the opposite of passion is stability. And we want to interact and to calibrate our differences and our polarities. That's one way of doing it. And just to finish this thought, because there's a counterpoint to this, there's a vitamin that the masculine needs as well. When I'm in my masculine, I desire connection as much as my partner does. However, the feminine wants connection 24/7. But the masculine, also who wants connection, once I have connection, I start to yearn for freedom. And so then I want to pull away And, John Gray calls it go to your man cave or whatever. I need to get away. And once I'm away, I miss her and I want to get back together again. And I go through this infinite orbit, this gyration that's unstoppable. It just exists. If you try to get in the way and stop it, you're going to cause frustration, which leads to anger and arguments. So the counterpoint to the 20 minutes of listening per night that you need to give your partner is you've got to allow your partner to disconnect occasionally. And there's a way to do it. Dr. Pat Allen, one of the people I interviewed, put it this way. She said that when you are disconnecting, announce your disconnection. Honey, I am going fishing with my buddies, or honey, I'm going golfing. Honey, I'm going to yoga. Honey, I'm going to lunch with so-and-so, and I'll be back tonight. I can't wait to see you at 7 p.m. for dinner. So now you've announced your disconnection and when you intend to reconnect. There's no need to be insecure. Everybody, it's expected. Everyone knows the parameters, but it's crucial that if you say 7 p.m., you be home at 7 p.m., or you better call, because your word it's so important that you keep your word in a relationship, because that's part of trust. So to review, listen, but also if you're the one who's having your moment of expressing your feelings, don't ask for more than that 15 to 20 or 30 minutes maximum per day, because the masculine side of the brain can't handle more than that and begins to do what Dr. Gottman calls as flooding. You'll begin to flood. And once you flood and become overwhelmed, you start to push away and you can't take it. And your resilience level reduces. So don't become greedy, or this precious resource will diminish over time. That interaction, that's the thing I learned. Probably the number one most important thing, if I had to quantify it, I learned that anyone can do this. I mean, you don't have to try this unless you want to be a little happier.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to do this unless you want to be in a better relationship.
Yeah, you're echoing our what we've come to over the years after being in traumatic times. We didn't learn this in the beginning. We learned this after we had to. Yeah. So if you're listening and you haven't had some big trauma in your relationship, or you're not in a relationship yet, take notes, because it's really not that complicated. It's a matter of sitting down. We call them check-ins.
Yep.
We have 3 kids and busy lives, so it doesn't happen every day, but we have a morning check-in when we can for 10 to 15 minutes where we talk about our day, our schedules, get on the same page. When am I seeing you? Are you going to be with us for dinner? That kind of thing. Then we feel secure for the day. We feel like we've checked in. And then at the end of the day, when we can, we have another longer check-in like the one you just said. And in that check-in, we have a little bit of a deeper level of questions, just like prompts, but it's the same idea. We hold space for the other. We practice active listening. We are looking at each other. And, the times that we've come to each other with neutral and then it ended with this happy, more close relationship, or the times we've come to each other really annoyed, and then by the end, it's always better. We've never regretted a check-in. So just know that this is here for you if you're in an intimate relationship with someone, and it's important for both sides.
And I feel we've been trained at this for long enough now. I really wish, and we do try to do the check-ins as often as we can. And the more official check-ins happen less frequently, I think, than either of us wanted. 3 kids, 2 full-time jobs. It's hard sometimes but we definitely have moments throughout the day, especially me being kind of the more masculine one in the relationship, learning over the years that I need to express what's happening to my wife, not looking for pity, not looking for any specific response, but just so that she feels connected to me, to be able to say, hey, here's how I'm feeling today. Here's what's going on. And, Sophie's actually really good at expressing that to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what was the second point? Oh, the second one was masculine and letting you or she have her own time.
I'm actually just learning about this.
Yeah. Well, we both are relearning every single day. We're like, oh, I had a dinner last night with my girlfriends. I'm like, I don't know the last time that I sat at a girlfriend's house and just ate and talked. Like, it felt so special. And I was like, this needs to happen again. So we put it in the calendar for next month. And it's important. And he has more boys' nights, and it's, or go out on his motorcycle and go to Malibu and read a book. Like, I want him to do those things. And it doesn't take anything away from me. If anything, it adds to the relationship when he goes and takes his own time, whether it be 2 days alone somewhere, which is such a treat for a dad. Or if it's, a 30-minute, I'm going to just go off and go for a jog real quick. Great.
Totally.
I hold space for that.
Roger, I have a question. We're talking about this documentary, but we mentioned this before. So much of what you've done. You know, when I look at The Office, I look at Veep, I look at Curb Your Enthusiasm, like relationships are such a central part to
yes.
one of the storylines there.
Yes.
I mean, in The Office, different relationships that are happening within the office and the way they cross-reference each other. And obviously in Curb Your Enthusiasm and Veep at different points had different sort of entryways into this. A lot of that was done before you did this work. And I wonder if reflecting back on some of that, if you look at relationships differently than when you were doing some of that work.
One of the things I discovered in my work as a filmmaker, editor, writer, director, etc., is that we watch movies and TV shows because they are a reflection of human relationships. Oftentimes we're looking for something that's missing in our own relationship, which is a jolt of emotion of some kind. We watch whatever your favorite TV show is to get anxious or feel suspense or to cry or to feel happy for someone. And good drama and comedy has these jolts, and they're all based in relationship conflict. We watch these conflictual dramas work out, and we see how they work out and who gets punished for their behavior, who gets rewarded for their behavior, their little morality plays. But comedy comes out of conflict. All drama, every one of your favorite movies, if you look back, it's a big fight between somebody and someone else or something or a society or the environment. There's a big fight that goes on, and which was resolved at the end. And comedy, I mean, like trying to dissect why something is funny is kind of a fool's errand, but fools are hilarious. And so I'm willing to go there. And one of the reasons comedy is funny is because you can watch somebody else's tragedy and go, wow, I'm so glad that isn't happening to me. I'm so much superior. Right. Yeah. Every time Larry David has a comedic moment, it's because he told a little lie that got out of control, or somebody does something that he's sort of like our social warrior that, that's too many ice cream scoops at the free, too many free scoops.
Or even just being such an asshole. And you're like, God, he's such an asshole, when really like we're all assholes. Like
it's within all of us, right? We all have the devil and the angel and the id and the superego, et cetera. We're all human. Humans are the same worldwide, whatever. I've traveled the world making these documentaries, and that was one of the ideas that I was really driven home, is that everyone's the same in every country. They all want the same things. They want to feel loved, and they want to have a job, and they want to have a family, and to feel a sense of belonging, because we're social creatures and everything. And then there's all these other layers that are, each culture is a little bit different, but basically we're all the same. And so humor translates and stories translate from one culture to the other, for the most part, when they're grounded in these core relationship values and interactions.
Oh, I love it. I love it. If you look back at your life, because you, again, like having been telling these stories about relationships for so long, do you see where from your past, like parents, friends, specific shows or movies, your concepts came from? Because what I heard you saying is, I wasn't quite sure about relationships or marriage specifically. And then I did this work and it brought me to a different place. Where is that coming? Where did that original idea come from for you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, all of my work has comedy as a common thread. Even my documentaries are comedies. The Truth About Marriage, it's a comedy first. And then underneath it, once I've entertained you, hopefully, are some lessons or ideas or insights that you might go, wow, I never thought of that. And I trace it back to, as a little kid growing up, I remember my dad was really funny, and I wanted to be funny like my dad. Unfortunately, I lost him at a young age. He died when I was 13. And so I have spent my whole life wanting to be funny like him, but I'm not him, and I could never be him. And he was much more of an extrovert, and I'm much more of an introvert. And that's why I gravitated behind the camera, where now what I do is I look for the humor in humanity. That's my goal, is to find the funny. Finding the funny, whether it's with a pile of footage while I'm editing or making a documentary about the nature of existence. My prior documentary is about existentialism. How do you make a documentary about existentialism? Well, it's a big, absurd, funny documentary, because life is absurd. The universe is a big joke in many ways. That's the existentialist concept, which is my core question in that film was, why do we exist? Why are we here? What is our purpose? What are we supposed to do? And so that was a crisis I had to work out for myself, and I did by making this documentary. And I found an answer for myself by the end of that film, so that I could exercise that demon, and through a catharsis, move on to what's next, which was I needed a more challenging topic, which was marriage.
I feel like this year has been really hard for everyone, obviously. And I've been craving that cathartic laughter. I've been craving, Saturday Night Live was off air for pretty much the entire quarantine, 6-7 months. It just came back, which I'm so grateful for. What types of comedy, or how have you found ways to laugh during this time? Because I feel like that's what we all need. It's just so serious. Like this entire year has been layered with so much seriousness.
Right.
What do you do? Tell us what to watch. Tell us what to do.
When you're making comedy, one of the rules of comedy is the more serious a topic is, the funnier it can be. There's nothing more serious or potentially funny than death. And that's how we deal with the anxiety of our own impending doom, which will come someday, is to laugh at it, to make jokes about it, to find the humor in it. And so it's a necessity. It's another vitamin that we need as human beings, is to laugh at these things that are so serious in life, or you'll just get depressed and dissolve into a puddle of anxiety. But having gone through a year of a pandemic, that's made things much more difficult than we're used to. Mm-hmm. And I asked all my experts about that once the film was done, what should people be doing now that we're in this sort of a different world? And they had very specific suggestions there as well. They said the number one thing you can do is to ban criticism. Because if you listen, like, John Gottman talks about his 4 horsemen. I found one of the most mind-blowing statistics about Gottman's work was that says he could predict with over 90% accuracy if a couple will stay together, and if they do, how happy they will be by watching them for 5 or 10 minutes. But looking for this one indicator, which is contempt. Does either partner have any contempt for the other? What does contempt mean? It means sighing, interrupting, ignoring, discounting them. You're not working as a partnership. And so criticism is a big part of contempt. So that was, everyone says, treat contempt like it's the virus itself and you want to keep it out of your house.
So true.
And then the second thing they said was, people are going to be feeling like now is a time to work on our relationship. And they all said, actually, delay your big decisions. It's better to try to fix your relationships when you return to normal, not now when you're in this hyper intensive, different sort of period. A lot of people are breaking up, or maybe even changing their relationship status for good or for the bad, because they're in this situation that makes things feel far more intense than they would during a quote normal time.
Everything feels more intense.
And I think people feel out of control. And so we want to try to control something. And if you are with a partner and you're locked in and you're much less flexible in terms of leaving to get your space or listening to your partner, as we talked about earlier, but you're not always in an emotional and psychological place to sit there and just accept somebody else's emotions. When you're limited and you don't have the ability to leave, it can be really overwhelming for some people. And I think you're right that people often in times of crisis have a hard time imagining what it would feel like to be outside of this crisis. So you get this fear because this is like this now, it's going to be like this forever. And I hear that from a lot of people. They say to me, I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. And I go, of course you're freaking out. The whole world is freaking out. That's actually the norm right now, is to be freaking out. And so I think what Sophie was asking, what you're kind of pointing out to is, hey, how do you lower the volume of the noise a little bit and allow a little lightness? Even if, yes, you'll have things to figure out in your relationship when this is all said and done, can you get yourself into this active maybe even proactive place and say, hey, let's watch something amazingly funny, or we can't do all the activities that we want to engage in. Let's go for a walk outside, right? Let's lighten the mode.
Let's think about the things that we like loved during quarantine. Like we started watching Little Dicky.
No, I worked on the pilot of that show.
Hilarious. And like, I don't know that if we weren't going through quarantine, it would be my cup of tea.
If I asked Sophie if she wanted to watch a show called Little Dicky before this starts, or well, it's called Dave, but about a rapper named Little Dicky, she'd be like, you are insane.
Like, why are you wasting my time? But it brought us so much comic relief. We would sit and roll around on the ground laughing. It brought us so much joy, and it's completely ridiculous. But
don't you love how it ended too, with them breaking up because he was into his own thing and she was into her own thing? And we know they've got to work this out in season 2.
Yeah, totally. He wasn't being respectful. And that's a huge part. You've got to respect your partner in all stages of life, all stages. Yeah,
I almost love that you were in and out of relationships while making this movie, because the reality is, if we look at statistics, right, the reality is that many people have a hard time holding on to relationships. And I'm not talking even, forget the dating. Obviously, you date repeatedly until you find somebody. But even once you find somebody, it's hard to hold on to it. And Sophie and I, that's kind of almost our mission in doing this, is to help people bridge that gap so that less people get divorced, or people who shouldn't get married realize that ahead of time, as you talked about.
What happens if we're so tempted to want us to change, right? To switch relationships, and you're not trading up. You're just trading for a new set of problems. And
100%.
You're throwing away a shared set of experiences that you can never duplicate with someone. You got to start all over again. And that people seem to think that's what they need to do, is I got to get that initial burst of dopamine all over again.
For sure. And also, I just want to add, like, it's not just a new set of problems. A lot of them, they're the exact same, because your partner mirrors back your issues. So whether or not, if I would have left a D for good at 26 years old with a baby, that was 10 years ago. I would have just had to pivot to a new relationship, and yes, have to start over from scratch. But also, all my shit was there. All the stuff that I have to deal with this partner, I would have had to deal with that partner. And same with a D. He would have been on his own, figuring it out and starting from square one. And that's harder in many states, unless of course you're in an abusive relationship, and unless of course you're in something that is so traumatizing and like you said, the contempt or something that isn't a good fit, different thing. But if you're just like giving up because it's hard, every relationship is hard.
Right. First, find a good fit. And then second, like Chris Ryan says in the documentary, you're not in a relationship. You're in a series of relationships with the person who's changing, and you're changing over time. So you have to be able to evolve with them, because it's not going to be the same when you started out. It's going to be new. You're going to have something new 5 years and 10 years and 20 years from now, and different, 100%. But that's not bad. And people start to yearn for, well, I miss that initial burst of excitement, when my heart was beating and we had that passion. I want to get that back. And the thing is, you can get that back with a partner.
100%.
And I have a whole chapter in the book, it didn't fit in the documentary, about people wanting how to rekindle passion. There are classes people take with experts.
Sophie and I work on this all the time. We talk to people about this all the time. You're so right. To be honest, I don't understand why people give up on that within relationships. It's almost like you're too scared to rock the boat. And by being too scared to rock the boat, you end up leaving your relationship in a place that you're dissatisfied in. I love Chris Ryan. I consider him a friend, and some of the aspects that he talks about in relationship can be controversial sometimes, but absolutely have to do with that idea of, it's your job to keep the relationship spicy and exciting. You mentioned it before. It's not just going to happen. It doesn't matter how exciting it was in the beginning.
Right.
It's not going to stay that exciting unless you put work in.
Well, yeah, you can't manufacture that newness in terms of like the chemistry that you experience side by side, but you can recreate and manufacture newness and spiciness in every other area, to be honest. Well, I want to read one quote, and then we're going to go into our 5 questions with you.
Okay.
But I actually screenshotted this yesterday, and it's from Rising Woman, who I've had as a guest on this podcast before. And it says, true partnership is rooted in a love that has moved beyond the illusion of the honeymoon phase and into truth. It is a place where each partner puts their heart into embodying the best version of themselves in the relationship. It is a space of mutual encouragement, celebration, and evolution.
Yeah. Not always easy to maintain, but I think it is the mark of a long and successful relationship. Before we go into the 5 questions, what is your next? You've done Why Are We Alive and Existentialism. I feel like that should deserve an entire freaking podcast episode beyond. And now you've dealt with, the truth about marriage and this idea of relationships. What's your next project?
Well, just to finish what I've covered, my first documentary was about Star Trek fans called Trekkies, subculture of obsessive individuals. My second documentary was about aliens called 6 Days in Roswell, where I wanted to get to the bottom of, are aliens really real? And so I researched that. Then I went into existentialism and then marriage. I also did a film about car salesmen. That was another subculture I studied. It's called Suckers. And I was fascinated by what makes a good salesperson. And that is a whole world unto itself. What is next? Well, I'm starting Curb Your Enthusiasm season 11 in 2 weeks. So I'll be working on that. And
Sophie and her entire family are massive, huge, incredible fans of all your work on that front.
Curb fans can rejoice. There will be another season. I just finished a documentary called The Comedy Store, which is now airing on Showtime. It's about the history of that famous comedy club in Los Angeles. And it's really the history of all the comedians who came through there and became big stars, which is almost every big name in comedy that you know.
Totally. We've been there. We were there recently.
Yeah, and I'm working on my second book now, which is about comedy, how to edit comedy.
Oh, beautiful. I love it.
Amazing.
Again, thank you so much. We're going to go into the 5 questions. We ask all of our guests these questions, and it's one of our favorite segments.
I want to see if this works.
Sophie gave us a sound. Thank you for that, baby. You have no idea. My wife is so against shtick that the fact that she just made that happen just gave me a little chill. I'm, excitement in the relationship. What is the best advice you've ever received, Roger?
From the first time I went in for counseling, I was in a relationship. My second time I fell in love, and this woman dumped me. The first time, it was more mutual, but this time I was shell-shocked and in pain. And the reason I knew it was love, the 3 times I was in love, is because it hurt so much. And if you break up with somebody and you don't feel pain, you weren't in love. That was my conclusion. But I needed some coping strategies that's what I felt like, to deal with this pain. And I got a referral from friends and went to a therapist for the first time by myself. And she asked me, she said, how can I help you? And I thought that's a great way to start. And I said, well, I need coping strategies. And so she, after hearing what was going on in my life, she said pretty early on, after a couple of sessions, she said, what's happening is that part of your pain is because you feel like you've lost control of your life, which I had. And part of being happy is, if you're placing your happiness in someone else's grasp, then they have the ability to make you unhappy at some point. We're all responsible for our own happiness. At the beginning. You can't rely on someone else to make you happy or expect them to make you happy. They can enhance your happiness.
Sure. Absolutely.
So she said the way you're going to regain control of your life is you need to cut off all communication with this person. Because even though we had split up, she was still emailing occasionally, and I was emailing, hoping that maybe we could sort of fix things or figure it out. And every time we were reconnecting, it was reestablishing the pain level, and it's sort of like ripping that Band-Aid off quickly, or just slowly peeling it off, hair by hair. That's very painful. So it's better to just pull it off once. So she said, once I did that, I healed much more quickly. And I thought that was fantastic advice.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. You've done a lot in your life. What has been one of your proudest moments to date?
My mother is also gone. I lost both my parents. My mother died at age 63, my father at 41. But I realized as my mother was dying, and luckily we were all able to say what everyone needed to say, because, sadly it was a slow and painful way to go. But the good side of that is we had time to say what we needed to say. And I realized that I existed in order to make my parents proud of me. And so whenever I did something or achieved something, I would call my mother and say, guess what happened? I just did this. And, nothing made me feel better than feeling her pride washing back on me.
Oh, wow.
And I miss that. To this day, I miss that. And so I still reach out for that from friends or relatives. My brother and I are very close. And so I share things with him all the time. And so it's a part of who we are, I think, and who I am, is a desire to make others proud of me. And not just my mother, but that's where it really started, flowed from, and it's still within me.
I so feel that. I mean, I also feel like Adi and I, we share a lot of really vulnerable information about our marriage, our relationship. We put ourselves really out there, and we have vulnerability hangovers for like weeks after sometimes. And we definitely have some haters and some crazies out there. But the moments that we get those letters and those emails and they're like, our relationship is completely different just based off listening to your podcast. Like, we've never even had a conversation with this person. They're like, if you could only understand the way that you've affected our marriage or our relationship or my life, that's what keeps us going. It's, and they're complete strangers, but then even more so when it's someone that you know so well and you grew up with, or your family. There's nothing better. I
get the same thing from one email from somebody who saw the nature of existence or the truth about marriage. And they tell me about how it affected them in some way. It washes over me, and I'm so grateful. And I always respond to whenever I'm just thrilled that you took the time to write. It means so much. Thank you for finding my film and talking about it or whatever. And so it means a lot. And so anyone who's out there listening, if you read somebody's book or see a TV show or hear a podcast, send them an email telling them a good thing that it did for you, because it means a lot to people.
So
beyond.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
And it keeps us going and wants us to keep creating.
And I recognize I lost my dad about 11 years now, but I know that feeling of always wanting to turn and just call him and celebrate. And it's a huge void. I don't know that it ever goes away. It's a huge void.
What about your hardest moment?
Oh boy, it's so hard for me to say I love you. And once I do, though, it's like the dam is burst and then it's easy. And it's because I grew up in a family, very Scandinavian-based Minnesota, where there's nothing wrong with you. You don't talk about it. So shut up, keep it to yourself, strong, silent type. That's the norm. And my first love helped me break through that. She taught me how to say I love you. For the first time, I think I was in my 30s and she dragged me there. It wasn't easy, and the relationship didn't survive my resistance to it ultimately. But it's so hard yet so easy to say to people. And I always kind of struggle too with, I don't want it to feel rote or like just meaningless because it's said all the time. But the danger is you stop saying it for good. And so it's hard to do it, and to do it without overdoing it. It's a fine line.
Yeah,
absolutely. Half my family is Norwegian and Swedish. So I absolutely understand the Scandinavian piece. That was my father's side of the family. And I grew up, nobody said I love you ever in my house. Not once growing up. And when we had kids, I talked about it on here before. It sounded, I speak Hebrew to my children. It sounded strange to say, I love you in Hebrew, because I'd never really heard it growing up. And I make a point, you just said it, it's not rote. I probably tell them 15 times a day that I love them. And I want it to be this enveloping memory of their, even if we just fought, it doesn't matter. I love you. It was a big discovery for me as well.
Yeah. What about how do you take care of yourself? Like self-care rituals, especially like long days on set. I'd love to hear like how you stay sane and take care of yourself.
By saying no. You have to learn to say no to people, and to especially particularly the emotional vampires who are reaching out to suck your life force away. You are allowed to unfriend people, and you should. And you should limit your life. Only let those into your life who are worthy of being part of your life. You don't owe anybody anything if you didn't give birth to them. And so
I'm gonna put your words on a loop for myself. I owe no one nothing unless I push them out of my body. Okay, cool.
Pretty much that's it. And so take care of yourself first. And for me, I've got to stay physical. Hiking is my jam. So I hike every other day and I feel so much better. And I'm rewarded by the endorphins and I feel better. It's a self-fulfilling loop, the self-rewarding loop. So those are the two things I have to do. I have to stay physical and I've got to learn, and I say no, because I'll tell you, here's a brief share. When I was in college, all the way up until probably I was age 21, I used to have these terrible stomach aches. From age, I remember 5, 6, my parents were mystified.
Same people. This is insane. I would leave school with stomach aches. I would have to go home.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was a mystery and the doctors could never solve it. I had the barium shakes and, looking for ulcers. And one day in college, I reached a point, I don't know why this happened, but a friend of mine was getting married and his ceremony was going to be in Iowa, and it would require me driving south from Minneapolis down to Iowa to be there. And I was dreading it. I just didn't want to do it. And the day came, I got off work. It was a Friday. I would drive down for the Saturday thing. And I said, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do this. If he's my friend, he's still going to be my friend. And he's going to understand that it was too much anxiety. I'm anxious. It was snowy. And from that point forward, I decided I'm going to do whatever I want to do that's best for me. It seems really selfish, but my ulcers, my stomach aches went away once I changed my personal philosophy to doing what's best for me first. You can't help someone next to you until you take care of yourself first. You got to put your own oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on. And I have been so much healthier and happier since then. And we're still friends with that guy. He's got his third wife now. And so
you have more opportunity for speeches anyway. It's fine.
Right. So you've got to do what's best for you. It's your life. It's not your parents' life. It's not your friend's life. You don't have to do anything anyone expects you to do. Realize there are repercussions to every choice you make and you have to own it, but still do what's best for you.
Yeah. I love that.
You're so much smarter than me, man. I just drank myself to not care about the anxiety anymore. That's how I dealt with that version of an issue, which is also very common in Scandinavia.
Last but not least.
You talked about so many different things you've done. We call this podcast Ignited because it's all about what gets us ignited.
I love that.
What ignites you?
I am excited by creativity. And that's partly what I learned during making The Nature of Existence. What is our point? Why are we here? What should we be doing? And I think it started with when I interviewed Julia Sweeney, who's an actress and a monologist. I asked her, what is our purpose? And she said, it usually comes down to people saying, well, I'm looking for happiness. I'm pursuing happiness, this pursuit of happiness. And she said, you can't pursue happiness. It's a false goal. It's not something you can pursue. It's not tangible. Happiness is a side effect of having a purpose in life. So the real question is, what is my purpose? What is your purpose? And no one can give you a purpose. You have to give your own life purpose. Amen. What is my purpose then? And I thought about it some more. And I thought, well, my purpose is no different from anyone else. And I was studying the universe at the time, and the universe is made up of stars being born and dying. There's destruction and birth, and it's all going on, and there's yin and yang and matter and antimatter. And do you want to align yourself with destruction or with creativity and construction? Well, I found, and what I would argue is you're going to be much happier if you align yourself with creativity, with bringing forth something positive into the world. It's easy to tear things down. It's much harder to build something. So what should you build? All you need to do to be happier, I think, and this is my realization, is be creative daily in some way. And you can choose how, whether it's write a poem, make a new dance, plant a garden, bring forth life. If you're an architect, you design a new building. If you're a business person, a new business plan, make a podcast, make a documentary. whatever it is, create something daily. And then when it's finished, you offer it to society, to your social group for feedback. And then you do it again, over and over again. There was a study I remember where there was something like 100 people in a nursing home, and they gave half of them, or they gave them all plants, and they told half of them, we're going to water this plant. You don't need to take care of it. And they told the other half, this plant is your responsibility. You have to take care of it. Well, the ones who suddenly had this plant, this responsibility for a plant, lived longer because now they had a purpose in their life, even if it was a plant.
Yeah.
And for the default for most people is to raise a new version of themselves, to have a child and try to bring forth a better version of themselves. And that occupies them and distracts them for 18 years, give or take, until you can kick them out of the basement and start their own life. And then you're back where you started. And now people are taking pottery classes or looking for hobbies or surfing or traveling, So you want to keep doing that. Your whole life is being creative, being inquisitive, being curious, reading, learning. You should never retire from life. You can stop working at a job you hate, but don't retire from doing things and contributing to society.
Amazing.
Hallelujah.
Amazing. Roger, you should be a storyteller. I feel like maybe
that should be your purpose.
This was so fun. First of all, so amazing to kind of get exposed to your insights about learning about marriage and relationships from some of the people that we love, right? So whether it's Chris Ryan or the Gottmans, like just some of our favorite people in the world. And I can't wait to see where you take these lessons in your own life, because some of the insights that you now have about relationships, I feel like are the ones that some people in marriages for 15, 20, 30 years are still missing. So that's incredible. And then we just love your work and we can't wait to keep following your work. We have some documentaries to catch up on after this, which I'm really, really excited about. And thank you so much for bringing this knowledge and your amazing storytelling to our people.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoy my documentaries. Let me know what you think.
We will.
We absolutely will.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, we want to hear from you too. So tag Roger, tag Sophie and me and Ignited, and let us know whether it's a documentary about marriage itself or any of his other work. We'd love to hear the insights you've taken away from it. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.